Getting our friends together isn't as easy as it used to be. We get it. Life comes at you fast. But trust us, your pals are desperate for a good hang. And when they hear you stock the party with drinks from Drizzly, they'll be banging down your door. Let Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery, take care of the supplies. All you need is an excuse. It doesn't even have to be a good one. It's your dog's birthday. The loquats are finally ripe. Whatever. With Drizzly, you can compare prices on a massive selection of beer, wine, and spirits and get them delivered straight to your door, which means you can entice the crew to leave their houses without ever leaving yours. Whatever the occasion, download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com. Today. Must be 21 plus. Not available in all locations. Man, I wish they had Drizzly when I used to play D&D and Riffs. Maybe it's time for me to start again. Thanks, Drizzly.
Do you ever feel like life is a never-ending series of lessons while you try to find purpose, meaning, and answers? I am Vanessa Fontana, the host of Figuring Shit Out, a podcast where we undertake self-help, coming of age, and healing. As I live my 20s in New York City figuring shit out myself, I've realized that if you spend your whole life trying to get your act together, you don't have a life. You have an act. On Figuring Shit Out, every Sunday you get to normalize the journey of not knowing and be guided into living your life with more intention and ease.
Hey! It's my song! Let's sing it! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Come on! It's gonna be fucking awesome! You know the words! It's gonna be fucking awesome! That's it! Say! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Yeah! It's my favorite part! Isn't it heavy? I'll play that! Coolest alive.
Hey ho, Jesse Blaze Snyder here, the coolest geek alive, and I've got another episode. Today we are going to complete the saga of Jesse Blaze Snyder, comic book writer extraordinaire. We're going to find out how I went from being obsessed with making elevated, perfected, beautiful comic books featuring the characters of the Marvel and the DC universe to being so fed up that I just wanted to pack it all in, and I started working on independent stuff. It was a really long journey to get here. Obviously, if you listen to the previous episodes about me working on Toy Story or the Muppets, or about me working for Marvel or DC, about all the people that I had supporting me, trying to get me in at these companies, and how frustrated I was writing pitch after wonderful pitch for them, and just seeing them go nowhere, and seeing all of my energy be spent and get disappointed just over and over and over again by the stupid system. But honestly, there was a particular instance that was finally the straw that broke the camel's back. And I can't blame this company. It was just this project and a couple aspects of this project which really just broke my heart. And this project was with Dynamite Entertainment. And let me just say, I had zero problem with the people that I was working with over there. It was really just the circumstance on the book that I was doing for them. Very famously, Nikki Barucci had been sitting down with Alex Ross at a dinner shortly after my Hulk Let the Battle Begin comic had come out, and Alex really liked it. He read it and was speaking positively about me as a new name that Alex had never come across before, and he was very impressed by the story that I wrote. Oh, I'm so proud to be able to say that to you. Alex Ross is one of my artistic idols, and to get that passed to me, like, that was how I got on Dynamite's radar, was because Alex Ross said something nice about something I wrote, which was just, like, I feel guilty actually even sharing that with you, because I have so much pride for the fact that that happened and that was told to me. But that was the beginning of us having a conversation about possibly working on something. At the time, they didn't really have anything that I was super passionate about. A lot of the licenses for characters that Dynamite Entertainment held at the time that we first met, they just were a lot of really classic characters that I was not aware of enough, and I saw it as a lot of work. I was like, oh man, in order to write these characters, I'm going to have to do so much research, and I'm not super into it. I'm not super into the job of like trying to go research some of these classic characters that came out long, long before I was ever reading comics, and I had not found my way to having an interest in. I didn't necessarily want to invent an interest just for a job. So I was waiting until Dynamite had something that maybe I could pitch. And one day I found out that they had gotten the rights to the Chaos Comics universe. Not all of the characters, not Lady Death, but a lot of the characters from Chaos. Purgatory, Chastity, and Evil Ernie in particular. Evil Ernie had always been, at the very least, a visual favorite of mine, and a character that I had a lot of fond memories about and for because I adored its creator, Brian Pulido. Brian Pulido is one of my oldest friends in comics. It just so happened that my father had produced a little mini Strangeland comic book that was a promotional thing that went inside the DVDs for this horror movie that he made years ago. If you really like sick, disturbing horror films, worth checking out, D. Snyder's Strangeland. This comic is pretty hard to find. Not very many copies of it were made in the first place, but it was produced by Chaos Comics. And when I busted to the Chicago Comic Con to go harass Eric Larson, my father put me in touch with Brian Pulido at Chaos Comics because they had a booth there at the convention. And I went and I met Brian and his lovely wife, and they were just the sweetest. They were the sweetest to me. I had a suitcase that I was lugging around because if you remember my story from previous episodes, I only spent I spent 2 days at the show, but only one night at a hotel. So I was planning on just dragging my backpack all around the convention both days. But I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to bring my suitcase on the convention floor because Chaos Comics let me hide it in their booth. So I would go to Chaos in the morning. My first day, they let me hide it there. And then I picked it up at the end of the day. And I did that many times over the years. Brian is a friend. And when I found out that Brian had lost the rights to a lot of his characters and that Dynamite had them, I was really excited to try to get the job because I love Brian. And I thought, makes me sad to say it, but I thought I could do good. I thought I could do good and make him happy, make my friend happy that somebody who cared about his character was working on it. But I should have known that was not going to be the case, because when I reached out to Brian at a certain point asking him for some books that I couldn't find a lot of the old school Chaos Comics Evil Ernie books, and I couldn't afford at the time to like buy them all online on eBay or whatever, and I asked him if he would be willing to send me anything and that I would send it back to him. And he very politely told me that his heart was broken. His heart was broken. He lost his character. That character was based on him. You know, Lady Death was based on his bride, and it meant a lot to him. And he lost the character that was based on him. And he couldn't help me. He couldn't be a part of it in any way. I was still so focused as an idealist on the good work that I was going to do, that I was going to do a good job, and that it was going to be something that he could be proud of over time. And I got to work on the book. And I do think that I did a really great job reinventing Evil Ernie. Granted, it's not the same thing. I didn't really want it to be the same thing. Evil Ernie was so reliant upon Lady Death in his universe for his actions. He was acting as this crazy psychopath because he loved death. He was obsessed with death, and he was trying to get her attention. He was doing anything he could to show the girl he loved how much he loved her by killing people, right? So this is a character who was killing because he was a lover. He was a good guy on some level, which is why you were rooting for him. So since this new Dynamite Chaos universe didn't have Lady Death in it, I thought all right, well, let's give it a new thing. And how do I get that same sort of drive where sort of love is driving the thing? And I came up with this concept about basically explaining that quote that you always hear about why do the good always die young? And I decided that the answer was because that's the way heaven likes it. The good die young because heaven needs those souls in heaven to keep them strong, because more evil souls in hell would make hell stronger. So we essentially needed the evil to exist on earth and the good to exist in heaven, and therefore tragedy often struck. Young and good people were dying all the time because that was a good thing for heaven, which made heaven to kind of be bad to some degree, and made anybody who was going around on earth killing bad people a bad guy as far as heaven was concerned, even though they were being a good guy, you know? So it created this really interesting dynamic, and I made this story about Ernest Fairchild, you know, our evil Ernie. He is tortured by this terrible town of awful people and these terrible foster parents. And he's this great kid who's being abused, praying to God every night. Why are you doing this? Why have you put me in this terrible situation where I'm being hurt by all these people all the time? And finally, in desperation, when his prayers fall on deaf ears, he prays to Satan, and he is led to create basically a ritual where he kills all the people in this town. And I didn't ever get to reveal it all exactly, but the town had been filled with the worst people on earth by hell. Hell was trying to empower themselves and get as many evil souls in hell as possible so they could upset the balance of power between heaven and hell. And they basically needed a megadeath worth of souls, which is, you know, just a million dead people. This is all concepts from the original series to some degree. And once he hit this million souls, it was going to bring about Armageddon on Earth. But Ernie didn't know that. Ernie just thought that he was killing these bad people and he was making the world a better place. He's a hero, you know? So he kills all these evil people in his town. He poisons the water supply. He kills his mother. Well, it's not his mother, it's his foster mother. And then he gets arrested and brought to jail with his crappy father, Buford. And they put him in the electric chair and they kill him. And when they kill him, all of the souls that had been hanging in the ether waiting to complete this ritual, they enter into his body and turn him into the demon evil Ernie that we know and love. And then he goes through a rampage through the prison trying to kill his dad, and it's a lot of fun. If you're a horror fan, if you like evil Ernie, it's very different than the original evil Ernie. Again, I wanted it to be different because it was impossible to make it the same. Dynamite did not own Lady Death, so it really, either I would create another version of Death that he was in love with, which seemed like a complete ripoff of what Brian had done, and he was still making Lady Death comic books, so I didn't want to have it revolve around a surrogate version of her. So this was my solution to that. A lot of people who were fans really liked it. Some people who were fans of Chaos didn't really like it because they felt like it wasn't honoring the thing enough. But most of those people didn't understand the constraints that I was under because Dynamite did not own the entirety of the Chaos universe. So it had to be markedly different. So I did my version, and I was generally very happy with it. I had a lot of plans beyond it. I was going to introduce a character named Lady Fate, and it wasn't going to be that similar to Lady Death and the relationship with Ernie, but Lady Fate was really interesting. She had butterfly wings, and it was supposed to be that thing of like a butterfly flaps its wings and it changes the course of history. That every little change or every little thing can affect things greatly. And this Fate character, the merest flick of her wings could change something that was going on across the world. I had plans to reintroduce a lot of different characters. I had a lot of really big things that I wanted to do. I was bringing in Will Pfeiffer and Mark Andreyko. I think Mark Andreyko ended up actually working on one of the Chaos comic book characters that I had brought him in. I brought him in to Dynamite. I said, let me work on this whole wing, and I'll handle the Chaos wing, and I'll make it awesome. And they didn't love Will Pfeiffer's pitch. I really liked Will Pfeiffer's pitch. I thought it was really cool. I think Will Pfeiffer's a great writer wanted to work with him. I guess they liked Mark's, but they weren't willing to make me the editor, at least not yet. And I did have a lot of fundamental problems with the way the book was coming out. I wanted to do something with issue number 1 where you could have your boss at your comic book store drawn into the cover. We would do custom covers where Ernie was holding the severed head and the face would look like the person that worked for you. There was a promotion at the time for Godzilla where you could have your comic book store being crushed by Godzilla's foot. At another company, I think IDW or something like that, that had been very successful, that had just happened a couple months earlier. And I'm like, let's do it just like that. But Dynamite did the same exact thing with Evil Ernie that they do with every book they put out. Tons and tons of different alternative covers. And, if you order this many, you can get this super, 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 super rare cover. There were so many covers to the book. And all of the covers depicted an Evil Ernie that was classic. It was all the classic Evil Ernie that Brian Pulido was famous for. But this was a different character that we were reinventing, and he looked a little bit different. I was working with a great artist, Jason Craig. He and I became great friends working on the book. We came up with a really cool visual for him. It ended even better. He finishes the book wearing his dad's cowboy hat with Smiley on the front of it. It was cool. What we were doing was cool, and what we were going to do was cool. I had a lost brother of his who was going to be called John Good, who also survived this crash at the beginning and ended up in foster care like he did, but ends up becoming a preacher who kills all of the people in his congregation with purple Kool-Aid and empowers himself on behalf of heaven, because he's John Good, to go stop Evil Ernie, who's killing bad guys, and John Good is killing good guys because that's what heaven wants. So it was a really interesting juxtaposition going on. I was proud of it. I was excited to write more. But then something terrible happened, and it's why I was getting all teary-eyed at the beginning of the thing. I love Brian Pulido. I feel that I really kind of owe him in small but important ways for me coming up in the comic industry and feeling comfortable at a comic convention where Chaos Comics had a booth, being invited to after parties and being able to meet creators and fans and people in the industry that are still my friends today. I'm so grateful. And I was doing a convention and I was sitting at breakfast with my friend, and all of a sudden I noticed that Brian Pulido was sitting at a table very close to me, and he was hiding. He was hiding from me. He didn't want to see me. He didn't want to talk to me. He didn't want me to notice that he was there. And, he and I are now friends again, and I mean, we were still friends then. But it made him so uncomfortable to have to deal with the subject on any level and to know the person who was working on his character and reinventing his character. He's never actually said anything negative about my work on the book, actually. He hasn't exactly been favorable towards work that has come after mine, but he's never actually named me or said anything mean about me. That's because he's a great guy. I appreciate you, Brian. That breakfast killed me. One of my oldest friends in comics, somebody who I saw as a father figure and was a real inspiration to me, didn't want to talk to me. And I didn't know how to handle it. I basically decided right then that I couldn't do any more Evil Ernie. I didn't want to do any more. He was uncomfortable, and he was my friend, and it seemed not cool of me to keep working on a book. It was supposed to be his. He lost it because of legal things. He got into debt and bankruptcy or whatever it was, and his characters got sold off, and it was a real sore subject for him. And I just hated myself that I was the face associated with the book about himself continuing. And I called up Dynamite and I said, I can't work on the book anymore. And they were like, what? We're like building a whole chaos universe around what you're doing here. We've been supporting you and letting you do whatever you want to do, which was absolutely true. They were great to work with. They did not give me notes that ruined my book in any way, shape, or form. I didn't exactly love the way that they were promoting the book the same way as they promoted everything else. I wanted to see it promoted a little bit more, promoted with a little bit more nuance, I guess. Promoting it a little chic, a little bit more chicly. Can you say chicly? But other than that, I was very happy with the working experience. I did have a number of other stories. I was about to do a story called The Train of Consequences, based on the Megadeth song, where basically Ernie was going to get on one end of the train and he was going to walk through a train, killing everybody on the train. And you were going to find out that everybody who was on the train was there because of Lady Fate. She had brought all of these terrible people onto one train so Ernie could kill them. She was working with hell to help them expand the ranks of hell. And the story of John Good. There was a lot of stories that I planned. There was a really great Vegas story that I had planned starring a lesser-known Chaos Comics character. I think his name's like the Dead King or something like that. I was excited to write them until that day at that breakfast where Brian Pulido was hiding. He didn't want to see me. That, I couldn't do it. And Dynamite, even to their credit, I feel bad. I tried to write a letter to Nikki Perucci a little while back and apologize because I didn't know how to tell them. But there was an additional piece of this puzzle that really made it worse. In every single script that I wrote for Evil Ernie, it said in the credits, created by Brian Pulido and Stephen Hughes. Stephen Hughes is the artist who's one of Brian Pulido's best friends who died many years ago, and he's responsible for creating many of these characters before he went away. He's a brilliant artist, and that guy is dead, and Brian had these characters taken from him, and so every script said created by Brian Pulido and Stephen Hughes. And Dynamite removed that credit. They removed it, and they would not put it in the book. I couldn't even credit my friend for his work. His name was not on the book that he created, that I was writing. That really just made it something that I just felt was morally wrong. I felt like, I write superhero comic books, guys. I like to be a good guy. I like to be morally correct. And, a lot of people's interpretations of that are different. You see me cursing my head off and whatnot. But I believe that at the end of the day, being morally correct is just making sure that you don't do any harm to other people. You do unto other people as you hope they would do to you. And I was feeling like I was doing something bad to my friend. And I couldn't make it right. So I quit the book. And I mean, clearly, I can't stop tears from coming out of my eyes about it, because it was just like decades of trying to give my blood, trying to give my heart, trying to give my soul to these companies, trying to do right. And all of my energy was just constantly being squandered. And then I finally had something kind of cool going on. And I couldn't feel right about it. I didn't feel right about it. I was screwing with a friend of mine's creation that had been taken from him and that he felt bad about. And I had to walk away. And this transformed how I was looking at what I was doing for forever. And from that moment on, I really became an independent comic book creator, which I hadn't necessarily been prior to that. Granted, I had good ideas. I had things that I kind of wanted to do, but I was way more interested in writing the next great Batman story than I was in writing some great Jesse story. I wanted to go into that space that I loved, and I wanted to create more things that other people like me would love. That was what drove me. That was what used to drive me. Now what drives me is getting myself into a position so that one day maybe I can help these films and these TV adaptations not be so bad. Because I love this material so much, I just want to see it handled correctly. And clearly, the people in charge right now, they can't do that. And if they can't do what needs to be done, I will do it. So, honestly, propagate my show, spread this around, share my show with everybody. Show people that there are people in this world who know what they're talking about and are capable of helping Disney and Warner Brothers and whoever else make billions and billions of dollars. We can all laugh to the bank together. Or listen, study, and get yourself in position to do this. I don't care. It doesn't have to be me. I got plenty of things to do. But somebody who loves this stuff needs to be in charge. And right now they're not. And we get just lesser lesser versions of the things that I love, the things that have inspired me my whole life, because the people in charge don't know the way. They don't know how to be good shepherds. They don't appreciate these things the way we do. You know what people who work in TV and work in film are obsessed with? TV and film. Yeah. People who work in film and TV work in film and TV because that's what they were obsessed with. That's what they think is the bee's knees. People who think comic books are the bee's knees, they work in comics. People who think that novels are the bee's knees, they work in books. That's it. You go where your love is. Okay? So it's very rare when some super passionate person is at the head of the comic book creation machine, for the movies, because most of those people work in comics. Fortunately, some people who love comics and love movies and love music and love books, whatever it is, and they can pinch hit. They can love movies and love comics at the same time and make something great. Peter Jackson loves movies, but he did also read those novels and go, oh my God, I love Lord of the Rings. This is one of the greatest things I've ever read. And then what happens? The Lord of the Rings is made. An incredible adaptation of something that everybody can universally agree is just one of the best fantasy novels of all time. But it's rare. It's clearly very rare that happens. We need people who love this stuff to go into film and television because they love this stuff that much that, like me, they want to make sure that the next generation gets a better version of our wonderful comic book myths than we've been getting. Okay? So please, if you're out there and you're listening, do it. Do it so I don't have to do it. But that was it for me. And not totally it. I have worked for a lot of other big companies since then. I worked for Heavy Metal Magazine, which was a little disappointing experience because I was hoping that when I helped them launch their humor magazine, which is called Softwood, I thought it was a very clever name, and I loved that Heavy Metal was going to make a humor version of the Heavy Metal Magazine. Me and my buddy Steve Kurth did a great story called Food Fight with these anthropomorphic animals in a civil war in the near future, being fought between the vegans and the carnivores. So anthropomorphic cows and chickens and pigs versus these these redneck military guys who are meat eaters, and it's very funny. Very, very funny stuff. That was great. I also worked for Camon, CMON. They have a really cool property called The Others, which is like, I don't know, it's almost kind of like a Cthulhu thing where the seven sins, these demons or something from the other dimensions are creeping in, and they are like poisoning people's minds and making them go crazy and dark, and there's these teams trying to find all these people and stop the whole world from getting corrupted and being taken over by these horsemen of the apocalypse, essentially. That was really fun. I did that. And then, recently I've been working for Merck Publishing. I do a book with them that I own a little bit of called Guns and Angels. I think they've kickstarted for the first 2 issues so far, issue 0 and issue 1. They're about to kickstart for the second issue. I'm super, super proud of that book, actually. It's one of the best things I've ever written. Super fun. It's just like, it's an assassin's version of The Princess Bride. Something that is really well balanced, is filled with humor, action, adventure, darkness, and light. Just a little bit of everything in there. I really highly recommend Guns and Angels from Merck Publishing. I've been working on that for a while. And, I did half of their spring special at Merck Publishing, and there's tons of little things that I'm sure I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, like I did the Alice Cooper casino game, or what is it, like the slot machine? I don't even know where you can find the full-length version of the thing that I wrote, the story that I wrote for this Alice Cooper in the Mouth of Madness. I forgot what it was called, but I actually have an MP3 recording of Alice Cooper reading my entire script that I wrote for snippets for this casino game. So, just tons of different bits of writing along the way that I've been doing, working for various people. Because, when you're a writer, you gotta work for people who have money to pay you. I love creating creator-owned things, but it does not always pay the bills until you get a gravy machine going, like something going on Kickstarter, which is what I'm trying to do right now. Which, by the way, I'm going to get into my book, King of Kings #1, at the most length that I've gotten into about it yet at the very end of this, because it is kind of the culmination of this story of me working on Evil Ernie and ultimately having to leave that project and being kind of forced out into the independent world of comic books. But this started in a couple different ways. First, me and my best buddy Aaron Sparrow, who I talk about all the time on this show, he was the editor for the Boom Kids line. He and I are both toy guys and comic guys and big nerds, and we have been best friends ever since. We worked together, on those books for a few years, and that's it. We will always work together, and I mean, literally everything I write, he reads. Everything he writes, I read. And we try and collaborate all the time to help each other out on anything that we're doing, even if I have nothing to do with it or he has nothing to do with it. Because I want to see him succeed, because he's a talented guy who deserves it and is great to the people that he works with. And I'm a talented guy who deserves it and is great to the people that I work with. And we want to see people like us propagate in the industry, because we need more people who treat their people good and are watching after each other. Comic books are a community. And the corporate entities that have been paying our bills not very well for so long, they tend not to take very good care of us. You see stories all the time about major league comic creators who die penniless, sick, and unable to pay their medical bills. It's awful. My whole career in comics has been with the intention to reinvent the comic book field and make it better for the next generation of comic book creators. And not driven by making it better for myself, but really like as a heroic act. Like, yo, man, the people who create Superman aren't being treated good. Like, how messed up is this world when you think of it like that? The people who are inspiring us to be good and be idealists and live better are being treated crappy by the corporate overlords who control Superman and control the intellectual properties that we love. It's sad. So the first thing that me and Aaron tried to do was we tried to go after the Disney license. I did speak about this a little bit on the last episode. We had a good friend of ours form a company called Joe Books, where they were able to get the license, but we were going after it for a second. We had such plans. Me and Aaron are huge Disney guys, big Pixar guys, big Muppet guys. I had all these Muppet reality show pitches. I had a new Muppet show book that I was ready to do. And I mean, like, I wish I could share these things with you. They're so funny. So funny. The Muppet reality show was going to didn't start with the Muppet Amazing Race, ended with Muppet Apprentice. Oh no, starts with Muppet Bachelorette, ends with Muppet Amazing Race, with Piggy and her new main squeeze, Bobo the Dancing Bear, which that only happened because he had the biggest ring that he offered her at the end, and Kermit was a producer on the show, so she couldn't pick him. And went over to Muppet Amazing Race, and then after Gonzo won the Muppet Amazing Race, because he was the only one who would jump off of Niagara Falls, him and Camilla, who were reconciling after him being on the Muppet Bachelorette, trying to go after Piggy once again because he still loves her from the nursery, for those of you who watched Muppet Babies. We had Gonzo with all the Apprentice money, so it was Muppet Apprentice with Gonzo as Donald Trump. It was some funny stuff. It was some really funny stuff. And the Muppets, the new Muppet show was amazing. I was going to do a play on the Long Halloween where there was a Muppet on the show who was eating all the guest stars, and we were solving the guest star problem by having all the guest stars were essentially holiday mascots. So it was like Santa Claus and Saint Patty, a leprechaun, or whatever it might be, the Easter Bunny, and all of the guests were disappearing before the show ended. And anybody who's paying attention to the book, you see this one monster. He's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the comic is going on. But it was a little send up to one of the most classic comic books that there is. If you've never read Batman The Long Halloween, I think I've made it homework before, but seriously, I'm sure some of you guys haven't read it yet. Go find Batman The Long Halloween and read that comic book. That is just the best way to get yourself into Batman. It's just a beautiful book, cool story, murder mystery. You'll love it. Everybody will love it. Anyway, we also had plans like with the mainstream line of books. Like I was going to set out to make Mickey and Goofy and Donald Muppet Show level books where it was something that parents could enjoy alongside their kids. I wanted to launch a new Mickey Mouse comic because Mickey Mouse has been published in comic book form for ages. But I wanted to launch a new one based on the... is it The Runaway Brain? The animated short where he famously becomes like a zombie Mickey and he's I wanted to launch a zombie Mickey book because I thought that that was subversive in the right way. There was tons of depictions of like zombie Mickey and grotesque Mickey in indie underground art and toy art and, you know, on sides of buildings and stuff. And I thought, Disney, you just got to lean into this. It could be really great. So many great plans that we had. But ultimately, when we couldn't get all the money that we needed to get in order to do it in the first place at the time, and a friend of ours was able to get the money instead, we went, all right, well, we know the people who are running this new company. We can work with them and for them. And I didn't end up doing much for them because they had not gotten around to buying the Muppet license, which was the main one that I was waiting on. I was also waiting on some of the classic characters like Mickey, which They launched with a bunch of Pixar books, I think, Frozen and Darkwing Duck and a couple things like that. But none of the things that I was especially waiting to work on. So I was waiting and I got lost in other things while I was waiting. Namely, creating the Mythic Legions art book for Four Horsemen Studios and creating Blacklight District, which would eventually be published by Image Comics. Now, Blacklight District was an interesting one. For those of you who don't know, I'm also a singer, songwriter, vocalist, musician, performer, whatever you want to call it. And for years, I made music that was very different. Like from song to song, every music project that I had was very different, and every song was very different from the last one. And people would ask me all the time to sort of like tie it together, do something that sounds like it belongs together on an album. And I took that as a challenge, and I decided to work on this album called Blacklight District that was inspired by comics. My whole premise for it was that the reason why I love comic books so much was the stakes of a comic book was the end of the world. And I thought that if the stakes of the songs were the end of the world, that they would be that much more meaningful in the same way that the comic books had been so meaningful to me. And when I say the end of the world, in a comic book, you're dealing with superheroes saving people, often saving their lives, saving many lives, saving the whole world. You know, if not for the Fantastic Four, Galactus eats the planet and we all die. Those are some real stakes. You don't get stakes like that in your average television show or your average film. They're just not present. But in comic books, those stakes are consistently there. The end of the world. So I wrote this album with my buddy Will Knox, and it came out so incredible. The last song that we did was this song called Symptoms, and I just had this vision of the zombie apocalypse because Symptoms was metaphorically about the zombie apocalypse. It was kind of inspired by The Walking Dead. I had a Walking Dead blacklight poster in my room at the time, and it was also, though, inspired by greed in politics leading to the end of the world. So you could listen to it one way and think, oh, it's the end of the world, it's the apocalypse. And you could listen to it another way and you could think, oh man, greed is going to kill us. And I had this vision of the zombie virus being passed around Washington, D.C. via an envelope of money. And basically, they'd hand you the money, and then the zombie would bite you. You know, here, the zombie comes with the money, and he bites you, and now you're a zombie too. And now, oh no, nothing's ever going to change because we're only dealing with zombies. The zombies have taken over. They're zombies because they've taken money, and they can no longer effectively lead the country. And that vision of that comic book and the idea that I might be able to get Tony Moore, one of the original creators of The Walking Dead, to draw it, because I did know Tony, like just a little bit. I had his email to be able to reach out to him. That inspired the whole book. It's a one-shot. Image Comics eventually put it out for us, but my company, Killer Rabbits Company, we made the book ourselves. And the Killer Rabbits Company, I'll say real quick, the whole inspiration for that was I view creative people as fluffy bunnies. We are the Muppets from The Muppet Show. I think that The Muppet Show represents creative people so well. And to me, it was, here's all of the different types of creative people and all the hard lessons that we have to go through in order to become valuable creative people in our fields. To me, it was like a bunch of rabbits, a bunch of fuzzy bunnies. Here we are. We're really just cute rabbits. We love and we love and we love, and that's all we do. But if you love and that's all you do, you're not going to survive. You're not going to survive in the real world, my friend. I'm sorry to say. Unfortunately, the real world tends to kick you in the ass a little bit, and it's the fuzzy bunnies who put a patch over their eye hole and get back in the game, learn from it and move on, who become killer rabbits, those are the ones who survive. So the Killer Rabbits company, KR Co., was just about me collecting all of the wonderful creative people who had learned how to be tough enough to survive in the game of being a creative person in the creative business, in the business of entertainment. The slogan for KR Co. is, "We're here to save you." I meant that then. I mean it now. And I finally feel like I'm back on the path after all these years of being off of it. And I'll tell you what happened to KR Co. and what happened to all these projects. Well, Blacklight District was inspired. Mythic Legions was a choice I made. I love action figures. I love Four Horsemen Studios. I respect them so much. I believe in them so much. I was essentially betting on them, and we agreed to produce an art book for one of the Kickstarters that they did for Mythic Legions. We didn't really make very much money in terms of orders for our book through the Kickstarter, and that was the only money we were given to do the book. I lost thousands of dollars trying to make that Mythic Legions art book as good as I could. I fell short in a couple areas because of a number of reasons. I had suffered 2 fires in 2 years. I went through a divorce, was dealing with chronic pain at the time, and had lost my biggest jobs in voiceovers at that time, which I was using to fund these projects, to invest in myself and basically invest in my children's future, because I knew how to make comic books really well. But me making comic books so well meant that I put the proper amount of money into making the comics, into paying my artists, into paying my writers. You know, we didn't hire just some no-name somebody to do the Mythic Legions art book. We hired Greg Weisman, the creator of Disney's Gargoyles and the showrunner for Young Justice, who's a friend of mine and Aaron's, become a friend of ours because we're huge freaking fans of his, and he's a great dude. And Greg came in, wrote an amazing script. We got Marco Friera. I'm going to get his name wrong. Most recent thing I remember him doing was something at Marvel. He did a Morbius series for them. It was great. He's a great artist, this dude. And I really got myself into trouble with that art book. I ended up having to individually ship all the comic books. I couldn't ship them with the toy orders because we were delayed. So that delay just cost me even more money. It was a rough situation. I'm still proud of that book, despite the fact that I shortchanged some of the additional features in the book because I couldn't afford to hire anybody to do them, because I was a little bit tanked at that time with depression and some real poverty. It was just one of those moments of like imperfect timing where everything lined up really poorly to make my life hell for a moment. So I was also doing Blacklight District 6 issues that we offered to Image, and Image offered to publish it for us, which was great. I think, our print run was like 6,000. We basically sold out of that 6,000, and the people who read that book, they love it. It's great. It's a reading and listening experience. You can actually still check it out at www.blacklightdistrict.co. It's .co because I couldn't afford the M. It's free, and it's an art installation. The 6 songs are on a little player at the bottom of the screen. When you go to the website, you hit play, and then you follow along with the 6 mini comics. The first one is in the style of Tony Moore, but was actually done by my buddy David Witt, who drew the King of Kings comic that's currently raising on Kickstarter right now, that I co-wrote with Mark Polton. The second issue is drawn by the late Jason Pearson, who is one of my favorite creators who has ever lived. God rest your soul, Jason. He has had such a massive impact on everybody's art style because he's just so influential. He's such a brilliant artist. He was one of Marvel's main cover artists and DC's cover artists for years. He did a book called Green. It's this this little story, but it's a song about depression. It was inspired by the Hulk looking around at all these other superheroes, going, "Why do they seem so happy and I'm so unhappy?" And I basically realized that I had been dealing with a lot of depression in my life that I couldn't admit to. And when I realized it was a song about depression, well, Jason had always pretty openly struggled with depression himself. And I thought I should get him. He knows this experience that I'm having. If there's anybody who should draw this story, it's him. And Jason, he knocked it out of the park. We also did a lovely send-up to Jack Kirby getting screwed by Stan Lee, which is lovingly illustrated by Phil Hester, who's a great friend in the industry, brilliant writer, brilliant artist. I'm such a big fan of his, so grateful that he participated in the Blacklight District book. We have Old School Colors by Eric Larson. Eric Larson, creator of Savage Dragon, Spider-Man artist extraordinaire. We have Old School Lettering by Chris Iliopoulos in that same story because we wanted it all to look like something that Jack and Stan might have done back in the day, at least to some degree. And beautifully painted bit by J.K. Woodward. He's done all the recent IDW Star Trek comic books for years, the fully painted ones that look really accurate to the portrayals of all the actors. Yeah, Chris Burnham did our cover, famous for the Batman Incorporated stuff, and it's Chris's favorite piece of art he's ever done. I don't know if that's still true, but at the time, years ago, he said, that's my favorite piece of art I've ever produced. Andrew Dahlhaus colored it, and oh my God, he did such an incredible job. I'm so grateful to Andrew Dahlhaus's coloring on our cover. I am a perfectionist. I rarely ever think that anything is perfect. Blacklight District, 6 issues. Is perfect. Image Comics put it out a little while ago. You can find that out in stores somewhere if you dig deep enough. But go to www.blacklightdistrict.co and you can check it out right now. And it's super cool. It's like a psychedelic experience, listening to the music and reading the lyrics, because the lyrics are what's printed in the comics. So you follow the lyrics as you listen, and it's like a psychedelic experience. It connects your ears to your eyes. It is so much cooler than I ever even imagined it would be. So when I lost my job and I didn't have any money to continue with all these projects that I was doing, I was able to get Blacklight District 6 issues over to Image Comics and have them put it out. And I basically broke even on that project, not including producing the music, but producing the comic, I was able to break even on that. But the art book for Mythic Legion, I lost a lot of money on that. And King of Kings, my 4-issue miniseries that I had co-created with Mark Polton and my collaborators like David Witt, I just had to stop. I couldn't finish it. I finished Blacklight District. I finished the art book. I wasn't thrilled with some of the backup material stuff because I ran out of money and I ran out of energy, and it was such a bad time for me. But King of Kings, that was the one. I made Mythic Legions because I wanted to show that I didn't have to write it. I didn't have to create it. I was willing to put my own ego aside and lovingly make something great for somebody else, which is what I was trying to do for Four Horsemen Studios. I love those guys. Love you guys. Shout out to Four Horsemen Studios. Love you guys. I'm so sorry that I didn't do as great a job as I wanted to do. I'm still very proud of the work that we did. But, perfect storm of bad, rainy days for Jesse Blaze Snyder, and having to stop work on King of Kings when we had written all 4 issues. Clearly, I was in the middle of producing this book by myself. I was 3 issues into drawing it. I was about to start coloring the second issue. The second issue was being lettered as I had to stop work on all of these things, and the book just sat there for a minute until I figured out what to do, which at the time seemed obvious that we were going to fundraise it. A lot of people were having a lot of luck with these internet fundraisers on Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and I thought, well, why can't we do the same thing? I didn't really want to do that. I had wanted to be like a traditional publisher and make these books and put them out and offer them at conventions the same way every other publisher that I had ever known or bought a comic from had always done. I wasn't somebody who was growing up buying comics from Kickstarter. I was somebody who grew up buying comics at conventions or buying comics at stores, and that's what I originally had planned. So I was a little reluctant to go this route, but I had people from Indiegogo and people from Kickstarter who were courting me to, go fundraise on our website. And eventually I decided on Indiegogo because of all the things that their representatives had said about how good it would be, about how much the platform had to offer us. And we got nothing. No traction whatsoever. After a week and a half, it was all friends and family members. I personally knew everybody who was pledging, with the exception of a couple fans who I still basically knew them. I knew them from my social media because they were the people who were really active on my social media, which were the only people. It was also around this time where Facebook had really locked down the, the findability of your profile. You would post things and like nobody would see it. I would have so little traction on anything I ever posted on Facebook, and zero traction whatsoever through the Indiegogo website. So only the people who were really vigorously following every move that I made were on the page, having pledged to the book. So after a week and a half, I said, this isn't why I got into this. I'm not expecting my friends and family to fund my comic book dreams. I'm not doing it this way. I'm giving back all this money to these people, and I'm going to find another way to do it. So I closed down the campaign, and it sat for another 4 years. And this past Christmas, I found out that Indiegogo was essentially automatically shadow banning any comic book that was a mature reader's offering. And King of Kings #1 is a mature reader's offering. The story of King of Kings was that, well, to start at the very beginning, 12 years ago now, Mark Polton, who was writing Hawk and Dove and Hawkman, I think at the time for DC, he approached me at a comic convention in New York, and he said, hey, I have this idea to do a behind the music with Odin and the Gods of Rock, with the Norse religion as a band that has passed their prime. And I don't know anything about music, but I know that you make comic books and you make music. Would you want to maybe collaborate on this? And I thought, oh, well, that's a really clever idea. Religious figures as musicians. I thought about it just for a second, and I turned to him and I said, could Jesus be the bad guy? And Mark said, sure. So I said, all right then, because I had always just had a bit of a bug up my ass about the way in which people who believe in the words of Jesus Christ, how they have practiced what they preach. Their practice of their preaching is terrible. Jesus never would have done so many of the things that have been done in his name after his death. Oh my God, especially not the Northern Crusades, which essentially wiped the Norse religion off the face of the planet, burned just countless holy books and stories of these religious figures. The biggest thing that I think is a problem when it comes to religion is we have a tendency to put ours above all else. Here's my thing, and then everything that everybody else thinks is stupid. And really, at the end of the day, everything everybody else thinks is relatively similar. The way it gets translated and the way it gets talked about and the things that we focus on tend to make us think that everything's so different. But, you know, you can watch a show like Ancient Aliens and go around culture after culture after culture after culture, spread out far away from each other, and they're talking about all the same stuff. And even on a show like Ancient Aliens 2, there are interpretations of the Old Testament and the New Testament that put a bit of a spin on it where it connects it very clearly to so many of these other religions of the planet, whether it be the ancient Vedas or the ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets that have been found, or the Quran and all of this stuff. There are ways to interpret all of it where it starts to equalize, and you start to go, wow, wait a second. I was an atheist. And the more I researched religion, the more I went, am I such a jerk that I'm going to ignore the consistent narrative that I'm seeing amongst all these stories? Or how about, am I such a jerk that I'm going to ignore people saying, I had a religious experience? No, I'm going to tell you, I almost died and an angel came to me and he said XYZ. Am I really such a jerk that I'm just going to outright go, nah, you're crazy, to everybody? That just seemed really nuts to me. And especially after an experience that I had when I was like 28 years old, I opened my mind completely from that moment on. I was just like, you know what? I think that there are things going on planet Earth that I can't explain. Things like I thought somebody was looking at me, and I looked up, and sure enough, somebody was looking at me. Explain that. There were things that I was starting to, a list of things I could no longer explain. And it made my desire to complete this comic, this King of Kings comic, just amplify and amplify, because the main thing that I want this book to accomplish, besides letting us laugh about religion, a subject which generally people don't like to laugh about, but we need to be able to laugh about everything. We do. We need to be able to laugh about everything. Laughter is healing. What did Patch Adams teach us, man? You know, did that guy die for nothing? He showed us a little honky nose. And you can heal kids in the cancer ward. You can. Laughter heals. We got to be able to laugh about religion, because there is a lot of pain and suffering around religion. And the main thing, though, is just that all these ideas are not so different from each other. I just wanted to put all these religions in a similar context so that we could look at them and we could go, oh, wow, I'm so surprised at how similar these things really are. And if you look at them correctly, you will see that they are similar. And I think our book does a really good job of making you laugh along the way, as it demonstrates that there are a lot of different ideas about these things, and there's something to learn from all of them. You know, the Quran is not just a book of terrible people saying terrible things, as some people like to put to it. There's a lot of positive things in that book as well. There's tons of things in tons of holy scriptures that I don't agree with. But opening ourselves up to the idea that the human beings around us who believe different things than we believe are not inherently evil, I think is very important. And that's really the goal of King of Kings. And King of Kings is available right now for you to order on Kickstarter. I told you we got Shadow Banned on Indiegogo. Kickstarter, it's been great. We already made our initial raise of $5,000. Thank you to any of my listeners who already participated in the fundraiser. Thank you. Thank you. I will always remember your names. You know, it's not that long of a list that has helped us to raise $5,000. And I'm going to remember and be grateful to you guys for forever. And to anybody else who hears this and goes to hear my cry for help, if you want to see better work in this world, please, you know me. You know what I'm about. You know what I'm trying to accomplish here. It starts with King of Kings. I've got a bunch more books that'll be coming on the heels of this. And if you're listening to this in the future, go look for my name on Kickstarter. You will find more campaigns. Go look me up on Twitter. You can follow me at Coolest Geek JBS. You can find me on Facebook. You can find my YouTube channel. Follow me. Follow what I'm doing. I need help. I need your guys' support. Without people like you, people like me, we ain't shit. We can't do nothing. I can't do nothing without people like you going, Jesse's not crazy. Without you, I'm just some asshole crying into a microphone. You know, it's the truth. And I need you guys. So thank you. Thank you for listening to this whole story. This was so cool that I got to talk for, I don't know, I did 4 episodes on my career. It gave me a lot of perspective on my career and how much I've done. I've really done a lot of stuff. I'm really proud of the work that I've done. I'm more proud of it than I thought I was. And it was an amazing experience for me to share my career with you. Thank you for giving me the excuse to do it. Thank you for the fact that we have crossed 1 million downloads. Like 2 months ago, we crossed 1 million downloads for this show, for Coolest Geek Alive. We had almost 500,000 downloads in June. I couldn't believe it. I thank you. Thank you guys so much. Please share the show and keep listening. Thank you for giving me somebody to talk to every week when I come to spout my nonsense about these things that I love. I love this stuff so much, and it warms my heart to know that what I have to say matters to other people in any way, shape, or form, because before I started talking about this at great length, I honestly was wondering if I had wasted my life focusing on these imaginary characters and these wonderful worlds that we all love and adore. And now that I'm here as the coolest geek alive, your connection behind the scenes to all the entertainment that you care about the most, like, this is it. This made it all feel right to me. And I plan to do this probably for the rest of my life, unless I run out of things to say, which, thinking about it, kind of seems unlikely. So thank you. Thanks for being on this journey with me. I'm not going to stop until I am the #1 podcast in this space, because I believe I have something to say, and it is not for me. It is for everybody. I say these things for everybody. We all deserve better adaptations of these myths The normies who don't know any better, they deserve better adaptations of these myths. And I will not stop until we are living in the golden age geek culture renaissance that I have always dreamed I would live in. You want to help me? Go pledge to King of Kings #1 on Kickstarter right now. Also, you love me, you hate me, you got something to say, write me at jessiblaze@jessisnyder.com. And join me next week and this Saturday for a special bonus episode for the further adventures of the coolest geek alive!
Hey, it's my song. Let's sing it. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Come on, it's gonna be fucking awesome. You know the words. It's gonna be fucking awesome. That's it, say. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Yeah! Hey! 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 It's my favorite part! Isn't it heavy? I'll play that. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Coolest alive. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Stay with your tribe. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Revenge of the Geeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Week after weeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Laughing with you. It's gonna be fucking awesome. And cry sometimes too. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Spelling it out. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Making you shout. I'm a genius. I got lyrics coming out me bum for days. You like that? It's a kazoo solo. I played that too. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Talking some shit. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Living the shit. My voice gonna be fucking awesome. Food in our mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Get in the mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Tell all your friends. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Call my text. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Raising the bar. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Straight to the stars. It's gonna be fucking awesome. It's starting soon. Straight to the fucking awesome. Passing the moon. It's gonna be fucking awesome. On with the show. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Ready, set, go.
It's got to be fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. It's gotta be fucking awesome. Just wait. You'll see. You'll all see. You'll all see.